welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. With me today is our own pianist in residence, Sam Page. This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
And I'm especially happy that I can talk at all. I mean, let me tell you, yesterday, you guys know, my throat was kind of scratchy. This morning I woke up, I couldn't even utter a sound. So this is actually good news that I can do a podcast today. And it's even better news because I have my good friend Sam Page on the show with us, who's going to do a little improv for us in just a moment. And we also have a special guest, as usual, Kevin Palmieri, who is the host, well, actually co-host, I guess, of the Next Level University podcast. Really interesting storyline with this guy. We're going to learn a whole lot about him in just a moment. But first, I got to go to Sam. And Sam, you and I were chatting before the show about, okay, what have you prepared today? And you were saying, well, I kind of prepared something. So have you figured out what you prepared for today?
It's, I'll call it an improvisation on a familiar theme.
Okay. All right. Well, we can go with that. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Sam Page.
Oh, let's do it.
I love it. Sam always does stuff that sounds very cheery and upbeat and makes you feel good when you're all done hearing it. That's why one of the reasons I love Sam so much. Plus, he's been a long-time listener, so I love him for that too. But yeah, that was great. Thanks so much for doing that, Sam. That was wonderful. And as I mentioned, our guest today is Kevin Palmieri, and Kevin has been doing his podcast for quite some time, 5-6 years now. He's done over 900 episodes, which I know something about myself because, as you guys know, I've done a few. And so I think we're going to have a lot in common to talk about here. But first of all, Kevin, I got to say thank you for joining us on the podcast. How are you doing today? I hope you're doing better than I am because my throat is barely functioning. But how's it going?
It's going very well. I've never seen a live piano performance while being on a podcast before. So Sam, thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. It's a wonderful day. Happy to be here. I appreciate your time, and I'm looking forward to chatting about all things.
I think I am too. I think we're all interested in finding out more about you too and your partner in crime there, because you've been doing it with a co-host now. Tell us a little bit about Alan. What's he like?
Oh man. So when Alan and I speak on the same stage at different times, I always go on and say, I am nothing like Alan. So Alan went to one of the best universities in the world. He went to WPI, Worcester Polytechnical Institute. Oh, yeah. So he went to computer and science engineering. And then he went and got his MBA later. So he is very much the opposite of me. Did all the college stuff, went to corporate America. I bounced around from job to job to job, never went to college. But he is the brains behind a lot of our business and our success. And it took me a long time to openly admit that because the ego part of me wants to think that I did it myself. But he has been my mentor since him and I reconnected 5 years ago, and I'm very blessed to have somebody like him in my corner and somebody that I can lean on and ask questions. And I'm just blessed that he's my business partner, honestly, because I wouldn't be able to do this alone at the way I'm doing it now, for sure. I know that.
I love that. That's really great. Now I'm also going to tease him a little bit too by pointing out that you are the CEO, not the college.
No, I'm the CFO. He's the CEO.
He's the CEO. You're the CFO.
He's the CEO.
So you're in charge of the money, basically.
Yes. I'm money driven. And that's an interesting thing about Alan. One time I said to Alan, Alan, you will be the best speaker living under a bridge because you don't care about making money. Like, we got to start making money as a business. And Alan's really good at charting the future. He's really good. He is connected to something that I'm not. He knows where we're going to be in 20, 30, 40 years. He is just, that's the way he is. And for me, I think about money all the time because I understand that money is a driving force for any business, particularly one that is reliant upon impacting people. You have to have gas to put in the car to get to the destination. So that is my focus every day, is how do we make money in the way that we love making money, helping other people. And that's my main jam.
I love that. I should probably hire you because I mean I've done the podcast here for love, just for pure love, and I finally in the last year or two realized, yeah, I should probably be making some money doing this thing.
For sure.
So I should be talking to you. I should be learning more about you. Maybe we'll do. I'm sure I'll pick up some stuff just by talking to you here on the show today. But yeah, I think
the
that's
goal.
an important piece of it. Yeah, that's really cool.
I think that a lot of people. I always say some people put their P's in the wrong order. They chase something that is profitable and they try to convince themselves that they're passionate about it. I did that in the past for sure. And I think if you just switch that and you find something that you're really, really, really passionate about and you try to stay in the pool long enough to learn how to swim and make it profitable, I think that's just a much better life.
Oh, certainly.
I made, right? And I think so many people are not taught that though, because it looks bad and it looks like you're losing for a long time. But even when you're quote unquote losing, if you're more fulfilled and more aligned than you would be if you were winning in something else, then you're not losing at all. It's delayed gratification.
I'm trying to remember when it was exactly. I think it was sometime last summer. My wife and I live in Connecticut, so we're in New England and we spend time on the shoreline. And I think we were actually in Cape Cod at that point. I don't remember for sure, but we were in a sort of a resort town, lots of gift shops and that kind of thing. And my wife was buying something, and as she was checking out at the counter, I got to chatting with the young lady who was behind the counter and learned that she was just getting ready to attend her first year of university. And I asked her, so what are you going to study? And she was undecided what she wanted to study. She was trying to figure out what would make the most money for her. And I said, well, have you ever thought about pursuing something because you love it and then try to find the money after that? And she says, wow, nobody ever says that anymore. That pretty much summarizes what you're talking about right there.
100%. Because I'm sure somewhere, and I don't know, I haven't learned your full story, Walt, but I'm sure somewhere in your life you learned that lesson and now you're trying to pass that on to other people. I think everybody wants to find the money. Everybody wants the most amount of money. And you can say money doesn't buy happiness, but everybody wants to find out for themselves, myself included. I found that out the hard way. And then I started over completely being broke. And even when I was in $35,000 worth of debt, I was under a lot of pressure and I was stressed out for sure, but I was more fulfilled doing a mission that was greater than me. And I just think that's an important thing to tap into. And usually it takes some sort of life event for you to get there. Somebody saying on a podcast usually doesn't do it because there has to be enough necessity and you have to question your existence. But when that happens, it usually reframes people. And there's so many stories of that.
Absolutely true. Yeah. In fact, I think that's the recurring theme, isn't it? I'm sure you've had that with guests on your program. We have had the same thing with guests on my program. Yes, I've been through the same kind of crash as you were describing. Yes, I was pursuing the dollars. Yes, it led to me crash and burning completely. Yes, it led me to being depressed. Yes, it led me to being deep in debt, twice as big as what your debt was. And that would have been bad enough, to be perfectly honest. And I was miserable. And all that I had been taught growing up had proven to be wrong, because I had been taught all you have to do is work hard and you'll be rewarded. But it's a lie. And it's the most vicious kind of lie, because it's a lie told from love.
Yeah, I am convinced that there's so many. So this is what happens. And this is something that we get asked all the time. How do I get over my fear of judgment, particularly by the people close to me? This is my answer. Understand that they don't know what you actually want. They just want you to stay safe. What I am doing is statistically going to lead to failure. It just is. Statistically, most people don't make it. Most people don't make it to where we have with the podcast, with the monetization. Statistically speaking, you telling me not to do this is trying to keep me safe. And I empathize with that. I really do, because I understand part of my story, Walt, part of my story, Sam. At one point in my life, my girlfriend who I was with wanted to go across the country and chase her dreams. So I actually live in New Hampshire. So I'm not too far from you, Walt.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
And she wanted to move across the country to California and chase her dreams. I wanted her to stay safe. I was not growth mindset Kev like I am today. And I gave her every reason in the book not to do it. I know from both sides. I have the perspective from each side of the wall, and I can understand people just don't want to see you get hurt. They don't want to see you fail. And at a deep level too, they don't want to be left behind. Yeah. And if you're going to go chase your dreams, Walt, you might not need me like you once did, because maybe we're not going to hang out and do what we used to do. Maybe you want to do what you do now. And I can understand. I empathize more than I ever have. And it took me a while to get there and experience on both sides, but it's important to understand that.
I don't know about you. I'm imagining that part of what got you there is certainly what got me there, which is having so many different people to talk with on the podcast. Because you get enough perspectives going on, you learn things. Especially if you end up interviewing, and this inevitably happens. I don't care what podcast you have. If you interview a bunch of people, you're inevitably going to be talking with somebody you disagree with, and perhaps even strongly. And those are the ones you learn from the best.
Yeah.
Not that
That's a
you
struggle.
It's not like you walk away from it saying, "Oh wow, I totally agree with him now." That's not the way it works.
Yeah.
But they make you think differently.
Yeah.
They make you look at stuff differently, and then you pick up a little tidbit here and a little idea there, and then you start piecing it together over time.
Yeah.
Right?
It's really helped us figure out our identity because success leaves clues. And there's a lot of people that, and I don't mean this in any ego way, but there's a lot of people who kind of get lucky. It just is the way it is. Some people do get lucky, and then they try to teach other people based on, well, this is what I did. But you got to understand, if you didn't have that stroke of luck, if you didn't have that thing go viral, you wouldn't be able to teach people anything because you wouldn't have the result. And oftentimes we'll get off the podcast and Alan and I will have a conversation, and we've really honed in who we'll have on. We're very picky at this point, but we'd get off the show and say, that's not true. What that person said, the weight didn't just fall off. You did something. Something had to change. It's not the way it works. And we realize that there's a lot of people who are against hard work. They're against talking about hard work for whatever reason. Maybe it's because I think for a long time we were talking a lot about grind, don't sleep, right? As a whole, particularly in the entrepreneurial space. And a lot of people burnt out and a lot of people didn't like that. I think we tend to go too much on the other side of, well, you know what? Now I only do what I want when I feel like doing it. Is there a place for that? Absolutely. Will you achieve the maximum level of results? No, you can't. It doesn't work that way. When you go to the gym, you either lift a weight that is hard and get results, or you lift a weight that's easy and pretty much stay the same. And I do believe life is very similar in that.
It's an interesting analogy you're using, the idea of lifting a weight being an equivalent metaphor for working on a business. That essentially you're building muscle. I mean, I hadn't really thought about it that way, but that's a valid metaphor because, I mean, you may not be deliberately trying to build muscle specifically, but in the long run, you're building muscle just because that's what happens when you learn how to do anything better. You just have to keep doing it over and over again. That's going to build a muscle. And
the gym, Alan and I are both bodybuilders, fitness competitors in the past. So the gym is something we reference metaphor. A lot. Yeah. It's a great metaphor for us, but I think that's the one place you can't fake it. I can't go to the gym and say, like, I can lift this weight and then not be able to lift the weight. The weight doesn't care.
Well, you can say it.
I can say it, right? But I can't fake it. I can't fake it. And I do believe building a business, it's the same thing. Human capability comes from having some sort of resistance and becoming capable of overcoming the resistance. And then you raise the resistance. Then you raise the resistance. When people say it should be easy, I believe that they're leaving so much potential on the table, because if it's easy, you have more to give. And if you have more to give, you have more results to get. And a lot of people don't do that. Bless you, Walt. And I think that we're being a little bit misled in some ways by some people, but just on the other end. I saw a video recently from Steve Harvey who said, look, if you only get 4 hours of sleep a night, you only get 4 hours of sleep a night. Steve, that's not sustainable. That's not holistic. That's not true success. So I do believe that you just have to filter the advice you get. If you're listening to this, filter my advice. You shouldn't just listen to what I say because I'm where I am. I think it's very important to take a step back and do the thinking for yourself and say, what is actually true for me here?
Yeah, I agree with that. And that's what I meant by the perspectives, because I think having all the different perspectives, you may not agree with them, but boy, you're going to get some ideas. Yeah. Ideas you never thought about, never occurred to you. I remember my earlier steps, like you, I started off, kind of, actually for me, it was a little bit erratic with my first year. I was just like, whoever could get on a show, okay, we're doing a show that day. And then I started doing it more with a weekly thing because I found one of the guys who I had interviewed turned out to be a good co-host. So he became a regular co-host. And him, like you, he is also a gym guy. He's a bodybuilder. And he used the same kinds of metaphors over time. One of the things that he talked about a lot was the difference between struggle and suffering. And I always thought it was a really interesting take on things. Since then, I've learned that a lot of people have the same take. I did not. It was not something I'd ever thought about. But the more that I did think about it, the more I realized it made a lot of sense. It's one of those things that's a little bit counterintuitive the first time you hear about it. Because, I mean, well, if you're struggling, you're not really getting anywhere. That's what it seems like. And very often people who struggle are suffering in the process, so it's often hard to differentiate between the two. But once you do differentiate between them, then you begin to realize struggle is just another way of saying working. It's a different word. It's a different way of thinking about it, but it's really the same thing.
What's your take now, Walt? So do you believe that suffering is a choice?
Yes,
Yeah.
totally. And
Okay.
I think I kind of always believed that, but I had previously equated suffering with struggle, so I thought struggle was a choice, and I thought you really wouldn't have to struggle to get where you wanted to go. But then I came to realize sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Sometimes it's actually better to not struggle. Sometimes it's better to just sit back and kind of release stuff. It just depends what it is you're trying to accomplish. But there are other circumstances in which you just have to struggle if you really want to get it where you want to get to. So for me, I kind of take it like, what's the scenario? If the scenario calls for some struggle to get where I want to go to, okay, I'm willing to do it. I just want to make sure I'm going to get there. If I'm not going to get there, the struggle is out. Forget it. I'm not good. I've put myself through that before. I've been down that road. So I'm really cautious about that one.
Do you think it has to do with the ultimate goal that you're shooting for? I did a call. It was supposed to be a free, I do free podcast calls to help podcasters. And it evidently wasn't what I expected because the person I got on the phone with tried to sell me on their coaching. And it was weird. But one of the things this person said was, Kev, do you really want to work 7 days a week and like go to the gym? And I said, yes, that's why I do it. I said, you have to understand, and I mean this with all the respect to this person I was on the phone with. I'm not trying to have a successful business. I'm trying to change the world. There's a big difference between me trying to get $500,000 a year and trying to put personal development in the pocket of every person on the planet. If there's no suffering that comes with that, I don't think we're going to do it. I just don't think it's possible to do that without suffering. So I've heard that, and I'm not there yet. I don't know that I will be, but I think that the understanding in the layer below of, well, if you can change your mindset and your perspective of what it is, I don't know that most people are there in terms of being able to truly shift that mindset. I think that's the belief I have currently, at least.
Well, certainly that is not where most people are right now.
Yeah.
They're certainly not at a place where that's definitely an advanced concept. It's not something I would introduce to somebody. I mean, I'm not a coach. I don't try to do coaching. But if I was a coach, that's not something I would introduce in the first lesson, in the first coaching call.
Yeah.
I'd be reserving that for later on. But what I also know is that there is a difference between struggle and suffering in the sense that people will choose to suffer thinking that suffering will get them what they want, and it doesn't.
Okay, fair.
And that's where I think the real challenge comes in, is identifying what do we actually mean by suffering. There's a great story that my friend told me that I'll relay briefly to you. He was telling the story about a guy who was on a plane, taking a ride, commercial plane, and the guy was seated next to a guy who was from Poland. And they got into a conversation, and in the course of the conversation, the guy said to his Polish friend, I really admire you people. You've suffered so much over the years. You've been invaded by so many countries. You've been dealing with all kinds of tyrants, all kinds of stuff just because of where you're geographically situated. I just admire you for all the ways you have managed to suffer and survive. And his colleague got all upset about it and said, no, we have struggled, but we have never suffered. It was a point of pride with him. So again, what does suffering mean to you? I think that's really what it comes down to. I think for some people, suffering is actually a badge of honor. I think for other people, suffering is a life because they don't know any other life. And I think for a significant segment of those two populations, suffering is unavoidable, regardless of whether you get to your goal, regardless of whether you get what you want, and regardless of whether you even get clear about what it is that you want. I think that's probably where the real differentiator comes in. Are you clear about what you want? Because if you're not clear, you are likely going to suffer, and you're likely not going to get to wherever you want to go because you don't know where you want to go.
Yeah. And I think I'm guilty. I lose sight for sure. The law of familiarity creeps in, and I forget how clear I'm very grateful to be as clear as I am in terms of like the goals and all that. We went to a very big event, the Brenda Burchard event, and this was like 3 or 4 years ago. And we got in groups and they said, on a scale of 1 to 10, I want you to write how clear you are on your future. And I think I put like an 8. And I was like, I feel like I'm pretty good, like all things considered. And I was very, very taken aback when I saw 3s and 4s in the rest of the group. And I realized that not a lot of people do know what they want their future to look like. And that's very understandable. They did and again, I don't know the book. I don't remember the book, but they did a test where they put people into an fMRI machine. And they said, I want you to imagine yourself 5 years from today. And they equated it to those people trying to imagine somebody else. They couldn't do it. They couldn't take their brains and put themselves 5 years into the future and have an understanding of what that would look like. It equated to them thinking of somebody else's life. So honestly, it makes a lot of sense when you think about it. I don't think humans are really, really wired to think that far ahead unless they have some sort of, differentiator, whether it's something in their childhood or they're blessed with something. I know that's not the way I normally thought, particularly in the beginning. I had no clue what was going to happen or what I wanted. So I very much understand. Yeah.
So I'm going to go to Sam here for a second because, first of all, Sam is a relatively new co-host. He joined the show a couple weeks ago. And Sam, as usual, you're smiling, which usually means that you're loving what the conversation's about. But I'm sure this is also in some way you're tying into yourself. Do you find yourself in suffering mode? And if so, what does that mean to you?
Not so much these days, but definitely in the past, there was plenty of suffering, and it was just like I couldn't see a way out of what I was struggling with. But I think of struggling, I think that it could mean like you're overcoming an obstacle, which ultimately serves your growth and expansion. Suffering, you're kind of just sitting in this space, and maybe in a way, not that you don't want to get out of it, but you just are like more comfortable in this space of suffering, and it's familiar, so you almost are holding on to it for that reason, and you can't really even consider an alternative way of being.
Yeah, so there's a really interesting perspective as well on what suffering is. That's the thing about the word. This word means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Yeah. And as usual, you have to kind of zero in. What do you actually mean? What does it mean to you?
We have a framework, so it's interesting when we talk about sacrifice and struggle. Ours is sacrifice, struggle, suffer, success. And I learned that from he's a former Olympic gold medalist in wrestling, and he was a mixed martial artist champion, Henry Cejudo, multi-time, very, very talented fighter. But that's what he said. He said it's the 4 S's. He said, and equate it to a relationship. If you are in a relationship that isn't serving you, what is the first thing that you have to do? If you decide this isn't for me, you have to make a sacrifice. And you have to say, honestly, this isn't for me. I have to walk. Then what happens? Well, you start to struggle. You start to have opportunities that maybe aren't aligned, and you start to get lonely, but you got to keep going. And then you get to the point where you've made these sacrifices and it doesn't seem like anything is coming your way. And you have those thoughts of, you know what, maybe I'm going to be single forever. And I think, to your point, Walt and Sam, I think when it feels hopeless, that's when you feel like you're suffering because there's no progress. It doesn't feel like there's any progress. So I do, in this conversation, Walt and Sam, you have helped me understand that perspective in a different way, which I think is always the goal of these anyway. So yeah, very powerful.
Absolutely, because why do these shows if you're not learning as well as passing along learning, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that was my motivation for getting mine started. I've said this a few times on the show, but I got it started because of being in the kind of situation you were describing. I was deep in debt. I had a business that had been running since the early 2000s that crashed with the 2008 financial crisis because I was servicing very small nonprofit organizations. And in the financial crisis, nobody wants to give money to a small nonprofit organization. So all my clients went, goodbye. And my business went, goodbye. And I was like, oh my God, what just happened? It was quite the struggle. And for the next 4 years, I was just like floundering, trying to get back on track again, largely because my old dream had just gotten blown out of the water and I didn't know what my new dream was. And partly because I didn't know how to handle something like that. I had stuff crash before, but I'd never had my entire income wiped out. And until you've gone through that's an entirely different kind of experience. I mean, I had created a business in the mid '90s. This was back when long distance services actually mounted to something, and you had to pay a fee for that. So I've been selling a discount long distance service through a website that I had created. I was one of the first people to kind of create something like that. And then the 2000 telecom crash came, but I had another income. So yeah, I didn't like that too much, but coming out of that was not difficult. But when you lose everything all at once, that's an entirely different experience, because the rent still has to be paid. The food has to be bought and paid for. And you're just going deeper and deeper in debt, and you're trying to basically learn how to swim while you're going down.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like the old joke about the way that entrepreneurs actually invent. They try to invent the airplane with a box of parts while they're falling out of the sky. It's like it's a hell of a way to invent an airplane. Yeah, I suppose you could probably do it, but it's not really your first choice.
Yeah. If you need the necessity, I think for a lot of people, it's just that required necessity. That's one thing I'll say is obviously the biggest benefit of having a podcast that has 900 episodes in 5 years is we've learned so much, right? Obviously, we've had to learn so much, but there's been so many iterations of, I started coaching for free, $0 an hour. That turned into $50, turned into 100, turned into 150. And then one day somebody gave me this idea to start a podcast service that helped podcasters. I never had that. That was never a goal. I never aspired to that. I didn't know it was possible. But we were flying and somebody said, hey, there's these new wings. You ever thought of putting these on? And I was like, yeah, you know what? Maybe we'll give that a try. So I think, to your point also, Walt, it's never too early. It's never too late. It's never too good to reinvent the airplane, even if it's not flying through the sky headed towards the ground like it was when the carpet got pulled out from underneath you. I think I had a similar situation, not like that. And I don't know that our circumstances were the same. I didn't have a family. My expenses were very low because I had set myself up, but I left my job and went full-time into podcasting more by choice than necessity. But I can imagine it's not easy.
No, it's not easy. I think the biggest part is that it's confusing, because everything that I thought that I knew turned out to not be true. Well, not everything, but regarding how to get that business going and keep it going, and that it was going to continue to be successful, all my assumptions proved to be wrong, despite the fact I'd had success. That was the most confusing part about it. I mean, if I had not had success, if I had started and right out of the gate, nothing was really happening, that would have been one thing. But to actually have the success and find that I was getting clients, and I was getting more and more clients until the whole thing fell apart, and then all of a sudden there were no clients to be had, that was confusing. Because where do you learn from that? I mean, it took me a while. I finally got a handle on it, but it took 4 or 5 years to come out of that one. And meanwhile, we're struggling to survive. So
I think that's COVID. COVID's done the same to a lot of people.
Sure.
I think of
it
digital. And that's the thing is, like, if you had a brick and mortar business, the lesson is I have to find some way to be more scalable and more global. And that's just, it's a challenge for a lot of people. I know a lot of people didn't understand the tech, and they didn't understand. It's that turning over of the soil of, okay, it's time for me to learn new things and new tech and new knowledge and new skills and all that. Bless you again, Walt.
Excuse me.
No, no worries.
This call is out of nowhere, but it's going to go away soon. Don't worry about it.
Yes, you're on your way back to health is what we always say. On your way back to health. But yeah, the landscape will continue to change forever. It's always going to. That's just the way it goes, especially with technology. We're accelerating at such a fast rate and Walt, you probably know that at a deeper level. Clearly you were in the tech space earlier than I was.
Yes. And not just with the space in my background either. Yeah, I was an IT guy. That was my background before I went entrepreneur. And yeah, it does definitely help a lot. But even when you've got that, I mean, your partner, I'm sure, knows this. He's got a degree from WPI, for goodness sake. But even when you know all the tech, it's not like it's all just an easy roadmap for you.
Yeah.
So I mean, I totally get where someone is coming from, where they are not tech savvy, where there may even be some tech phobia going on. That's even harder. But even if you got the background, I mean, in a sense, I've been pursuing something here lately that you really don't need to do. I've been trying to hook Zoom to StreamYard. And do you really need to do that in order to have a podcast? No, not really. But it was an interesting challenge. And oh my God, I mean, it kind of sucks you in one sense if you like doing that kind of thing, because it was insoluble. I mean, there are no YouTube videos. I looked for them. I checked them all out. None of them tell you how to do this. It's not part of the curriculum. So you have to kind of invent as you're going along. That's the way it was for me when I first started my podcast. There was no Zoom. YouTube barely had anything going on. Basically, your choice at that point, I started about 10 years ago. Your choice at that point was Google Hangouts, which would crash every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, that was about it. Either that or else you're talking by yourself into a mic. I actually found a little piece of software that allowed me to tap my own phone. That's how I ended up doing interviews at first, just by tapping my own phone line. And then, of course, the technology's caught up and started doing some cool things. That made it a whole lot easier. But so the question becomes, okay, I did have a tech background that enabled me to solve problems that other people would not be able to solve. But by the same token, I was able to solve it in part because of persistence. And this is my way of taking it back to what we were talking about before. We were talking about struggle and suffering. I really think the bigger angle is persistence. How persistent are you? You were very persistent. I mean, you haven't really hit that angle a whole lot in what you've said so far, but it's clear persistence was a big part about what you did, and it paid off for you, right?
Yeah. Well, even to your point, Walt, the fact that you're getting Zoom to connect to StreamYard, and for those who don't know, it's probably a nightmare behind the scenes. I can only imagine. But the thought behind that is you want better. I would bet on somebody like you because you're doing what's more rare is more valuable and usually garners better results. And so the persistence. I remember early in, we had just started doing YouTube a little bit earlier. We said, you know what? Audio is great. We got to do YouTube because YouTube was popping back then. Let's do it. We're going to do YouTube. And I remember seeing some high-level podcasters. They had these really nice teaser clips that they would have on their social media, and they had cut scenes and music and subtitles. And I said, we got to find a way to do that. And Alan said, yeah. And Alan said, all right, Kev, go YouTube it and figure out. Like, this is the program I think we should use. It's called Adobe Premiere. One of my friends is the director. He uses this program. It's great. All right, cool. So I did a bunch of Googling. I bought the program. I got a new laptop. And it took me 16 hours to make the first 1 minute teaser clip. It took me 16 hours. My laptop crashed 3 times. I had to buy an entirely new laptop. And it really was that, Walt and Sam, it was that thing of like, is this really that important? But that, and I tell this all the time, that persistence over the lifetime of our business will probably make us millions of dollars. Because now that is something we provide to our clients. We never could have provided that to other people if I didn't go through the, whatever it was, struggle or suffering. It felt like suffering at the time for sure. If we didn't go through that, we would never know the back end of that. So I have never quit tattooed on my arm. I mean, that is my motto. I'm the never quit kid on Instagram. So the persistence thing, one of the main reasons we've been able to make it is Alan and I are willing to crack our head against the walls more than other people. Just because we believe in the mission so much, and we won't miss episodes. It's just non-negotiable, whatever it takes, uploads in cars, airports. We take all our equipment on the road with us. We break down the entire studio and basically bring it with us. So with consistency and persistence, almost anything is possible. Obviously, there are limitations. I'm not going to play in the NBA. I'm 5'4". It's not going to happen most likely, but without consistency and persistence, almost nothing is. If you do not consistently dig a hole, it is not going to get very deep, no matter what happens. If you do consistently dig it, it can go as deep as humanly possible, really.
And by the way, height has nothing to do with it because I'm 6'8" and I'm not going to play in the NBA either, so.
Valid. I'd pick you though in pickup. If I was picking you or me, I'd pick you, Walt. Just give you the ball, see what you can do with it.
I'm not sure you really want to do that because I have eyesight in one eye. I'm 65 years old. That's not exactly a young person anymore.
Valid.
I'm probably not your first choice. Maybe your fourth, but not the first one. No.
Fair enough. Maybe one day we'll see. Maybe one day we'll see in real life. I'd like
if
that.
we had a real pickup game, yeah, that's possible. I suppose. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see if I can actually gauge the depth to the basket because when you have only one eye, you have no depth perception, right?
I'm actually legally blind in one eye as well. So
you are okay. So you know what that's like, right?
It's very interesting. I remember I went to the eye doctor when I was, I don't know, in middle school or whatever it may have been, and the eye doctor said Kevin must be doing terrible in school and he must not play any sports. And my mom said, no, he's doing really well in school and he makes all the all-star team, the all-star teams for baseball. And the doctor said, he can't even see. I have no idea how he's doing it. And I just said it's normal. I don't know. I've never seen, so I don't know what not seeing looks like. It was very interesting, very humbling.
It is interesting. Yeah, that's cool. Well, especially baseball. That's an interesting sport for you to excel in. I mean,
Yeah.
well, at high school level, I can perhaps see it, except perhaps on the level of high school teams playing each other, because there's at least going to be somebody there who has a fastball. But
Yeah.
being able to detect the difference between a fastball and a curve when you don't have depth perception, that's hard.
Yeah.
That's
Fly
really
balls.
hard.
Fly
Yeah,
balls
there you
always
go.
got me. Because you
Right?
haven't, it's like it's right there, and then the next thing you know, it's 30 feet, and it's like I don't think so. I think it was supposed to land right here. That was always a challenge for me. And I never really knew why. I didn't know why it was so difficult. Ground balls, line drives, those I was good with, but if it
Yeah.
went too high in the air, it might as well have gone into space where you are. That might as well have been where the ball landed. Honestly,
Because I didn't play baseball. I played softball, but I would pitch. Despite my height, I would pitch or play
Yeah.
first base. And when I pitched, usually I was pitching because the team we were playing against was all these big muscular guys who've been working out at the gym and hitting these massive line drives right at the pitcher, who didn't want to be anywhere near the mound. And I had learned all I had to do was just keep my glove in front of the ball as it was coming at me, and I would catch it every time. I didn't have
Yeah.
to be good at it. I just had to keep the glove in front of the ball. If I could do that, the ball would hit the glove, he'd be out, 3 up, 3 down, and we're up. It'd be that
Yeah.
simple. But you're right, with a fly ball, it's an entirely different thing, because, okay, how
yeah.
far is that one? Oh, whoa, that one's way out. Oh, my God. I mean, and you're behind at that point.
Yeah.
It's not enough time to catch up to it. So, yeah. I
yeah,
totally
real
get
struggle, real
Yeah.
struggle.
that. Yeah. But nevertheless, you managed to be an all-star. I mean, that's
Yeah.
pretty good. That's a real accomplishment.
I was really good. I mean, I don't know how. I got recruited by like travel teams. I got offers from colleges, not like crazy colleges. I definitely was not going to, play in the majors.
go to
or anything
FSU?
like that. No. They must have sent it to the wrong mailbox. I didn't get that one.
You're right.
But I mean, I made an all-star team I played from 9 till senior year in high school, and every year younger I made the all-star team. I was always in the newspaper in high school for like having a
Wow.
pretty close to the top batting average. I just think that's one of the things I'm just naturally talented at. There's some things that I am just terrible at. I cannot play basketball to save my life. It's just not something I can easily do. But when I started doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I picked it up very quickly, and I was rolling with people that were way better than me, and I was holding my own. So there's just certain things that I think you have quantum abilities for, and certain things you don't.
I think also, though, it comes back to that persistence thing. I really do believe that's a huge piece of it, because your story really is a story of persistence. The whole thing is a story of persistence. Yeah, there's the struggle, the suffering, the 4 S's, all that kind of stuff. But you don't give up. You're like that pit bull who, once he gets his jaws on something, forget it. It's over.
Yeah. Well, that's my identity, Walt. I think I was never the biggest ever. I mean, I was never the biggest. I was never the strongest. What I lacked in physical capabilities, I always made up for in the ability to suffer. Again, using that word, maybe it's not suffer, but I would dive head first. I did front flips over the catchers. I used to I would dive into the fence. I didn't care. I was reckless because what I didn't have, I would try to make up for. I wanted to be a stuntman when I was young. I wanted to be a professional wrestler. My cousin used to hit me over the head with chairs, like actual folding chairs.
Ouch.
Yeah, it was not a good idea at the time.
No.
That's what they were doing on TV, Walt. Sam,
we don't recommend this to our listening audience. Do not go there. Oh, Sam,
no, don't do that. Don't do that. But then I wanted to become a professional fighter. That was my goal. I was training mixed martial arts. I wanted to fight professionally.
Boy.
It's just,
wow.
It's always for me been, I don't mind getting my butt kicked. I don't know why. I don't know where it comes from. I don't know if I'm a glutton for punishment, but I just think that my childhood, what I've gone through, the struggles, it has prepared me in a wonderful way to do what I'm doing. And that has always been the through line for the guests we've had on the show. And maybe similar to you, Walt, your adversity becomes your advantage. The reason I believe in persistence so much is I had to stay alive. I think that's part of it. That's my identity. Never quit. I mean, that's my favorite motto in the world. So I happen to have that as my identity, which helps a lot. And it's definitely served me in many, many positive ways.
I'm willing to also bet that your early upbringing, parents, family, all that kind of thing, probably encouraged that in some way.
Yeah,
because
for sure.
if you're encouraged in that way from a young age, you're going to just kind of eat it up. It's just going to become part of your identity pretty quickly. It won't take very long.
Yeah, because I was raised by my mom and grandmother. Didn't know my dad. Didn't meet my dad until I was 27. We did lower middle class. Didn't have a lot of money. We talked pretty often about how we were going to pay rent. So that was definitely there. But my growing up, the stories in my family were my family members getting arrested. Like that was kind of what I heard about a lot when I was younger. One of my uncles got pulled over. And the person the police officer who pulled him over had to call for backup because he was so afraid of him. Wow. That was just my family. And in this moment telling it, it's like, yeah, that's pretty wild.
It is.
For me, it was just normal. It was just normal. Yeah. Right. So to your point, I think that's just been ingrained. And I never had the education. It was just pure work ethic. So the job I had that I left podcast full time, I was a foreman for a weatherization company. We would make state and government buildings more energy efficient. Okay. And the majority of our work, although I lived in New Hampshire, was in New Jersey. So I traveled every single week. And we got to the end of a calendar year and I was on the road for 10 months out of the 12, every single week. And when I was on the road, I was still working out 5 days a week. Oftentimes we would work second shift. So we might work 3 to like 9 o'clock on a Friday. We drive six hours home and I'd go straight to the gym and it would be 3-4 o'clock in the morning. I'd be working out. I'd go home and I'd just stay up. I didn't even sleep. So I just think that's the way I've been wired and it's hard to unwire that. I don't even know if I want to. I think
no, I wouldn't. Why would you? It serves you so well. Why would you want to unwire that? You know?
I don't know. I think at some point, am I attracting the struggle? Because it's like, well, I can handle this. Yeah. Give me this,
But you don't care about that.
I think at some point for quality of life, I might. Like I used to sleep 4 hours a night. There you go. It's like 4 hours a night's enough. It's like, I don't know. In retrospect, I probably should have taken care of that's the phase I'm going through now is, okay, I go to the gym. Awesome. I could eat better. I could sleep better. I'm very good about drinking water and that sort of thing. But there's some things that I could do better. If I really want to get to the next level, then I have to start taking care of myself holistically. It doesn't matter that I do better than most or better than many or better than average. That's not good enough. I want to do better than I do and the best that I can do. So yeah, there's always room for improvement no matter what you're doing.
Where does enjoyment fit into it? Because that was one of the first points you made at the top of the show here about how important it is to enjoy what you're doing. So as we're talking about this segment here, where does the enjoyment level come into, first of all, figuring out whether or not you're willing to continue to go at something like the pit bull, and second of all, deciding when you're going to make a shift?
Yeah, it's a real challenge, honestly. It's a real challenge because when you're doing something you love, it's not as bad. The struggle, the suffer, whatever it is, whatever version that you're in, whatever phase you're in isn't nearly as bad. So I think that humans, they have to have 3 beliefs that they want to take in action. It's possible. It's so humanly possible. Is it humanly possible to get to 900 episodes? Yes. Many people have done it. Is it possible for me? Can I, Kevin Palmieri, get to 900 episodes? With the right level of belief and work ethic? Yes, absolutely. Why not? As long as I just keep showing up. The third one, and I think this is where a lot of people, they get stuck. Will it be worth it? Will it be worth it if I do get through to the other side to do all of this stuff I have done? I don't think a lot of people believe it will be worth it, so they don't know how to enjoy it. I think you'd enjoy it more if you knew on the other end there was gold or chocolate or pizza or whatever you're looking for. So I am blessed because I get to do this for many hours a day. I do a minimum of 14 podcasts a week, a minimum. Wow. And I love it because this is what I wanted. But I just think you have to have that honest conversation with yourself of, do I love what I'm doing? Is it because of the results I'm garnering or is it because of the process? Is it because I'm motivated by the money or the mastery or the impact or the status of it? I just think you have to understand yourself. It's self-awareness. Why are you doing what you're doing? And
I agree totally.
What are you looking for? Yeah. Like one of my favorite questions to ask people is what would make what you're doing feel successful? Like when you start a podcast, I always say this to my clients. We get to the end of year one. What makes you feel successful? Like, what is the actuals? Is it X amount of listens, X amount of clients, X amount of speaking engagements? Because I don't know what you're actually looking for in terms of what are the markers that's going to help you actually enjoy this. And that's a whole, I mean, I think happiness is very result driven. Happiness is based on, if I eat this pizza, I will be happy then, versus fulfillment is, if I maximize my potential and I impact as many people as possible, that entire process is fulfilling. So that's another layer under checking in with the self and the self-awareness of, do I even understand what I care about as a human being? That's a whole nother layer, another conversation, really.
I think you're really on the right track here when you say you have to ask that conversation with yourself. That's really what it comes down to. I mean, for myself, when I started the podcast, like I said, I was starting it mainly, I figured it was my only solution at a point in time where I had no solutions. I was so broke, I couldn't, the way I like to tell it is, I was so broke, I couldn't hire a coach. I couldn't even afford to buy a book, but I needed to get help. So how do you get help when you can't afford to hire or buy anything? You start a podcast and you have guests on. There it is. You just had a whole bunch of experts coming on. So that's why I started. But you mentioned year one. After year one, I had a different reason, one that I didn't expect, one that kind of surprised me. What surprised me was how much I loved doing it. I was just doing it to solve a huge economic problem. But after doing like the first 20, 25 episodes, I was saying, wow, I like this. This is really good. I wonder if I could do this all the time. I mean, this is wonderful. I'm really enjoying that. I never would have predicted that when I started. It never would have been part of my thought process. So for me, part of it is being ready to adapt to what your experience is, and then also adapt your goals along the way because of what you're experiencing.
100%. And I wonder, looking back, Walt, I used to drive a truck. When I would drive a truck, I would be in that thing for 8 hours a day. And I used to listen to the radio. And I used to listen to the morning show from 6 a.m. until 10 a.m. And I thought to myself, imagine if you could talk on a microphone. Nobody can see you. I mean, you could be wearing pajamas for all you want. And after the 4 hours, you get to go home. Imagine what kind of life that would be. That would be awesome. It's like, retrospectively looking back, it makes a lot of sense that I'm doing what I'm doing. Before Facebook had like Facebook Lives, I used to make videos. One of my videos was, you don't deserve happiness. You deserve what you work for. That was one of my first thoughts, is everybody wants something, but they're not necessarily working for it. And I think that was in 2012. Okay. And that was long before I ever thought of having a podcast. I'm just curious for people out there, what did you think of in the past? What did you say that would be an awesome thing to do? Imagine if you could do that. Imagine if you could have that as your life. I wonder if that's part of your soul saying, hey, you'd be really aligned if you did this, and then the limiting beliefs, then the doubts come in after. So my process for starting the show was a lot different than yours, Walt. Somebody interviewed me on their podcast. And at the end of it, I said this to my friend. I said, imagine if you could do that for a living. And he said, you can, right? And I went out and bought the equipment. And that was the beginning of the journey for me. But it started with, imagine if you could do that for a living. Just imagine what your reality would be like. That's a powerful question. It's a powerful question. Oh, yeah. What are you imagining? What are you imagining?
And it's something we don't spend enough time doing.
I know.
We don't spend enough time imagining. We spend more time reacting.
Yeah. I have a practice. Go ahead, Sam.
Oh. I just realized recently how powerful imagination is. Like, I've heard from multiple spiritual sources that all creation begins with imagination. So something that I did a lot in my childhood, I'm called to do a lot more. So this definitely resonates.
I love it.
You've been given permission is basically what happened there. You gave yourself permission and you've been given permission.
Yeah. It's so powerful. I have a practice every day. I call it manifestation visualization. 10 minutes a day. I go on YouTube and I watch either a mansion tour or I watch a car review for a new Mercedes or whatever it may be. And I am just emotionalizing that. And I am imagining myself in that. I'm making that normal. So you hear people talk a lot about manifestation. All manifestation is spiritually connecting to something. So Mercedes, whatever it may be. Okay, awesome. I believe I am capable of attracting and sustaining a Mercedes into my life. Awesome. Then what is the next thing? You emotionalize it. You feel yourself in the car. You imagine what your house is going to smell like, what the breeze off the ocean is going to feel like. So you emotionalize it. The next thing you do is strategize. And this is the thing that people conveniently leave out, the strategize part of how am I actually going to get that? And then the last part is you take action. You take action persistently and consistently. And then years and years and years down the road, if you do it right and you make the right shifts and you have the right mentors and all of those things, a lot of things have to go right for sure. But that's really all it is. It's taking something from your brain, bringing it into your heart, bringing it into your hands and your action takers, and then bringing it into reality. It just takes a long time usually.
You mentioned the strategy piece. I imagine that you don't do something that I did do and wish I didn't. Because for me, when I hear strategy, I'm really good at strategizing, but what that really adds up to is playing through the what ifs over and over and over again.
Yeah.
I don't actually get to the final stage of, well, put it into action because I'm constantly replaying the plans in my head. Whereas I don't think strategy really means the same thing to you. I think it's like, okay, here's my strategy, go.
I am somebody who's really good at taking action. My biggest weakness is awareness. So, okay, this is a good analogy. I'm a big fan of sports betting. I like betting on football or mixed martial arts fights. I'm a big fan. And recently I realized that I need to level up my math. Alan is unreasonably intelligent when it comes to math. I said, hey, what do I do to get smarter at math? He said, just start taking online free college courses. I said, awesome, I'll do that. Cool. One of the first ones was sports betting for some reason and how you can leverage it. So no matter what you bet, you never lose money. There's a right algorithm for you to run. And the second I heard that, I looked it up and I started doing it myself. My awareness wasn't high enough to know that was the thing. I am very good at just taking messy action. I just don't usually have the awareness to get the result I want yet. That's my biggest bottleneck is my lack of awareness. One of my biggest strengths is just messy action. I'll go mess it up a million times. I need often somebody to come in and say, well, have you ever thought of doing it this way? It's like, interesting. I'll try that next time. And it usually goes better. Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? Because like you said, we all have our different strengths and weaknesses. You very graciously just identified one for you. Mine's kind of on the opposite side of that because I have no trouble being aware of certain things coming my way. There are other things I'm oblivious to. But there are some things, if I'm getting a signal off of something, I can be aware of it. My biggest problem is paying attention to the signal. I know it's there. I hear it's there. I can see it's there. I just don't, I doubt it. Like, no. I should be able to just keep spinning my wheels here and get where I want to go.
Yeah.
Which, of course, when you say it that way, it doesn't make any sense. But
you know it.
That's what it seems like. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but you know it, right? And then it's like, what do you do? I think that's the next step is what do you do? There's recognizing and then there's, I don't want to say fixing, but there's recognizing, then there's redirecting. And I just think it's that level of humility. There's a lot of things I'm just not good at. I'm not smart compared to Alan. I'm not as smart as my business partner. It just is a fact. And me not admitting that is only hurting me. There's a reason that Alan's the CEO and I'm not. It's my company. I made the company. I own 51%. I shouldn't be the CEO. That's not my strength. Money is my strength. I'm good at making money and focusing on money. And I'm good at being consistent. I track the finances every day. I don't miss ever. I track the listens every day. I don't miss ever. I don't miss. I have 25 habits I do every day. That's my job. That's my job. That's when I get to do this full time. I should be able to do all those things, but there are other things that I'm just not as good at. And humility, having the hungry humility, the humility to admit, look, I'm weak in this arena, but the hunger to say, but how do I get better? That's okay. It's okay not to be great at everything. Nobody is. Some people just don't admit it.
Well, that's self-awareness right there.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, humility is certainly an accurate way of describing it, but really it's just, are you aware of yourself? Do you know yourself well enough to know this is what I do well, this is what I don't do well? And the things that I don't do well, I probably should not be in charge of. The things that I do well, I should definitely be in charge of. I don't want to reverse that formula. Reversing the formula leads to all kinds of frustration. I know because I've tried it. So
yeah. But then there's part of it too, Walt, of I think a lot of people are afraid to it. I don't want to say afraid, maybe ashamed to admit what they're actually good at. We're taught not to, speak up.
Interesting.
You know what I mean?
Talk about that.
That's a whole nother thing. When I went on a podcast recently, and this was very hard for me to say. I said, I want you to understand there's a very high likelihood that I know more about podcasting than Joe Rogan does. I know that sounds crazy, but you got to understand, Joe Rogan didn't have to study it to grow. He just started it and went. He had people, he's never edited a video. People do that for him. So in terms of the art, he's really good. He's one of the best interviewers in the world. In terms of the behind the scenes business, Joe Rogan doesn't know anything about the business of podcasting. He doesn't have to. There's no necessity. But I got off that interview and I was like, oh my goodness, if anybody hears that, they are going to think I am so arrogant. They're going to think I'm so arrogant. But I've studied the industry. Walt, I'm sure you know more about podcasting than most people. You have more episodes. You know, and I think that you have to, I think sometimes I'm humble to a fault because I don't think I deserve accolades. And I think that's a wiring that a lot of people have. It's not humble to say that you're not good at something if you're only saying it because you don't want somebody else to say it and make you feel bad about yourself. Something about admitting when people poke fun at themselves, I think it's because it would hurt worse if somebody else did it. I really do believe that. I'm the first to call myself short because I don't want somebody else to do it. Right? I don't think that's true humility. I think that's, from my perspective, it's me being a coward sometimes, really. But
well, either that or else it's self-protection.
Self-protection, yeah. But I think if I'm in the public eye, I'm going to get, you know, if that's the worst thing that anybody ever says to me, hey, you're short, I think I'm doing pretty good. And I have to make sure that I become aware of that, right? If you're in the public eye, people are always going to have something to say. But really check in with that if you're listening to this. If you're the type of person who struggles to take compliments, you're probably also the type of person who struggles to take the wins out of your life. People are really good at finding the losses. Really good. I did this wrong. I did this wrong. I did this wrong. Awesome. Tell me 5 things you did right. Just give me 5 things you did right every day for the rest of your life. I guarantee you start to look at yourself a little bit differently.
I love that. I absolutely love that. In fact, you're reminding me of a conversation I had with one of my co-hosts. I actually have a whole bunch of co-hosts for doing each of the different shows. And one of them, she actually is on a sabbatical right now, but she's been doing the show with me up until this past March for like 5 years, something like that. And during that time period, we've gotten to know each other real well. I've picked up so much good stuff from her. One of the things that she talked about on a number of occasions was her own inability at one point in her life to accept something given to her. And to give you an example, a very classic example, you're out to dinner with a friend and the friend says, I'll get that. And your response is, oh, no, I've got the bill. Like you can't even accept having somebody buy the dinner for you. Instead of turning it around and saying, wow, I really appreciate that. I am willing to accept a gift that is given to me. I thank you for it. And I'm so grateful for that. And just totally buying into it and feeling it and recognizing it and appreciating it and all that kind of thing. It's an entirely different vibration. Yeah. And learning the difference there is one of those many things I picked up along the way about how do you get yourself into a better space? How do you become a more developed human being? One way, appreciate gifts when they're given to you.
I think that's vulnerability, really.
Yeah.
I really do. I think there's a level of vulnerability in saying thank you or saying, wow, I can't, that means so much to me. Alan and I were in Florida for a speaking engagement, and so it's weird because it's one of my ex-girlfriend's mom. It's her mom, but she's always been a supporter of the podcast and the business. And she's been a guest on the show a couple of times. Nice. And she Venmo'd me $100 or $200. And she's very intuitive. She's very empathic. And she said, I know you've always struggled to receive in your past. You need to unwire that. Here's a couple $100. And it was very interesting. And we ended up spending it on dinner with one of our friends, which was nice. But that was a lesson for me. That was a lesson. I don't think I am good at receiving. I don't think I feel worthy often. And I think, again, this is what I'll say too, Walt and Sam. So many people talk about learning. I have a bookshelf behind me. It's got books on it. The thing that I don't think gets talked about enough is the process of unlearning. Learning is amazing, but you have to unlearn stuff that's wired in you since you're 5, 6, 10, whatever the age is, that really is running your life. Adding new stuff is awesome, right? But if you add new soil on old soil, you're still sprouting the seed from something that might be toxic. So that is my theme of 2022 is unlearning stuff that is no longer and may never have been serving you in the first place.
Yeah, we call those tapes, and those tapes can haunt you. They can just wreck your life. And
100%.
and that's usually what happens, because that's what makes them tapes. They keep playing over and over again until you finally wipe the tape or replace it with another tape. They're going to continue to play over and over again. And the worst part is when we don't recognize that it's a tape playing and we start saying, well, it's because this person treated me that way, or that event happened, or that experience, or it's all the external stuff. And we don't actually look inside and say, oh, wait a minute, is there a tape playing?
Self-awareness. That's the through line of everything.
Yeah, it really is. Well, I got to tell you, I'm sad because I'm loving this conversation, and I hate to have it come to a close, but you have to do it at some point, so we're going to do that. But before we do that, you got to give people a few pieces of information. First of all, tell them, how do they find Next Level University? I'm sure it's pretty easy to do, but tell them anyway.
I appreciate it. Yeah, wherever you're listening to this, search it. If it's on Apple, we're on all the major podcast platforms. Just search Next Level University, 7 episodes a week every day. And also we're on YouTube as well. All of our episodes are on YouTube under Next Level University. So we aim to be in your pocket every single day from anywhere in the world for free. That is our goal.
That's a great goal. By the way, you've one up me. I don't know if you knew that. I only do it 5 days a week. I take the weekend off.
How many do you have total, Walt? How many episodes?
Over 1,600. I'm not sure what the exact count is.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Good for you. That's
well,
awesome.
you asked the question earlier, how do you aim for that? I never aimed for it. I never thought in terms of how many episodes I would do. Yeah. It's when I got there, I said, how did I do that? I mean, it was not part of the conversation. How do you get there? You just do it. That's all. You do the episodes because you love them. I think that's really the answer. I got there because I love doing them. Well, thank you.
Congrats. Yeah. That's 1% of 1% of 1%. That's a number that most people never get to. So I admire and I respect that very, very much from one podcaster to another.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that very much. And that's me practicing taking the gift in. So thank you for the gift.
Yes, of
but
course.
more than that, you know what it is? You already know this. It's the love of it. I mean, yes, I admire you for you've turned it into a financial career as well. That's something I'm still working on. But you know as well as I do, the only reason you really keep going to do all those 900 is because you're loving every one of them. Yeah. If you didn't love it, you probably, knowing you probably would have powered your way through anyway, just from what I've learned about you in the last hour. But at some point you would say, God, is this really worth doing all this? I don't love this. Yeah. But you do love it.
I do.
And I think what love actually does is it sustains us. It sustains us through hard times. It sustains us through difficulties. It sustains us through adversity because, we still love doing the thing.
Yeah. It's what it was in the start. It's better. It's better now than it was in the beginning. I get to episode 7 of our show. I said, I want to wake up when I want. I want to podcast. I want to be my own boss. That was literally my dream. So, but again, I'm guilty just like everybody else. Some days I wake up and I think, I'm not going to do this today. I forget. I have moments of forgetfulness where I forget how blessed I am. So I'm human just like anybody else, but I try to remind myself pretty quickly. Look, at one point you'd be crawling through an attic somewhere in New Jersey. So be grateful you're in front of this microphone in your home. Like be grateful. So, but I appreciate it.
I love that. An attic in New Jersey. I mean, that's basically a perspective that, it's real for you. It like that
Too
lights
real.
up your life because you've been there. You know exactly what that's like, right?
Too well.
That's a great thing. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Of course.
And for sharing your expertise, sharing all of your wonderful story. I mean, I feel like it's been a pleasure to get to know you. So thank you very much.
I appreciate both of your time. Walt, Sam, it has been a genuine pleasure. Anytime, I'm excited to come back if you ever need somebody to come back on. So I appreciate the time very, very much.
And Sam, thanks so much for the improv at the top of the hour. That was great, as usual. I mean, you always hit that top spike, and you did it again. But nice job.
Well, thank you. Happy to do it. And thank you, Kevin. This has been great. I've enjoyed it a lot.
I appreciate it, Sam. Thank you.
And thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere, because, hey, guys, you make it really worthwhile to be a podcaster. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.